Alright, that's working now. Oh wait, let me get the light. Whenever you're ready to begin.
Hello, you are listening to Trump Republic Radio. It is April 29th, 2018. I'm your host, Enzo Quesada, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Bobby Hester.
Hello, everyone.
Now, this week, Bobby, we do have some big news, but, we're going to start with big news that might not be necessarily important.
Oh, this is very important, Enzo.
But it's big. And that is, the stuff with Kanye this week. We're going to start with that.
Yeah, Yeezy decided to go off and have a little fun this week. It all started with the first tweet when he said, "I like the way Candace Owens thinks." Now, if you don't know who Candace Owens is, she is a black conservative woman, and she works with Turning Point USA. I think she even came to our university earlier this year. We didn't see her, but I know that she was here, and there's a little bit of an uproar by the campus leftists because of that. But, you know, I don't really have anything negative to say about her or anything positive to say about her in that regard. But, you know, Kanye said he likes the way she thinks, and that started this whole escalating mess of apparently Trump, Kanye coming out being more pro-Trump, and then a lot of people not liking Kanye because of that. A lot of people unfollowed him on Twitter, and a lot of people decided to follow him on Twitter because of that. And it's escalated to the point now where I don't even know what's going on, to be perfectly honest. I mean, he started taking pictures wearing MAGA hats, going out in public wearing a MAGA hat. He said Trump was his brother.
He got his MAGA hat signed by Donald Trump.
He got it signed back when they met at Trump Tower when Trump was still president-elect.
He showed that off.
Yeah. But, apparently he also said that he and Trump have dragon energy. So I don't know if that's, susceptible or whatever his version of meme magic is, but he's got the dragon energy, so good for him, I say. And it's also led to a bunch of other people coming out, both in support and in criticism. I know Chance the Rapper, I don't listen to him, but he tweeted out, "Black people don't have to be Democrats." He was also forced to apologize because of that. And even Kim Kardashian even came out. She tweeted support for her husband. She never said anything really regarding Trump per se. I know she doesn't like Trump, but she was essentially calling out the people that were saying that Kanye West had like mental health issues because of his support for Trump. It really shows just how far the left will go to eat their own when it comes to that sort of thing. I guess you can't really consider Kanye West to be part of the left anymore, but it's a big mess. But this morning, Kanye tweeted out that he shaved his head. There's some pictures that he had tweeted a couple of days ago with, he had that little short hair. He shaved his head and tweeted his support for Emma Gonzalez, who's that one, Latina chick, lesbian woman that tries to steal all your guns because apparently she survived the Parkland shooting. So that's caused a lot of Trump supporters to not like Kanye West anymore. But, this entire thing has been an amazing thing to witness and watch because all the, MAGA types on Twitter were like, yeah, Kanye, yeah. And a lot of people on the left were like, oh no, Kanye, how could you do this to us? And then there was most people that are just like, I don't care either way, but I like the reactions of people, and I like following the story to see how funny it is. That's my take.
It's been very, very up and down. I mean, personally, myself, my favorite genre of music is rap. I've always liked Kanye West. I didn't care what his political beliefs were whatsoever because he didn't really make them known so much. But I mean, it's fine that he's supporting Donald Trump. I'm not, elated that he's doing so, but it's making conservatives kind of behave differently. They have been crazy excited about this, and now they're being let down because he's supporting gun control advocate Emma Gonzalez. But I mean, he's a musical genius, but I don't consider him a genius in like anything else.
No, definitely
I
not.
don't care about his opinion on politics. If he supports the same guys I do, that's fine. But I think so many conservatives were finally saying, oh, wow, there's this huge black entertainment star who's supporting a, right-winger or a conservative. This is the cultural change that we want. Everyone get behind Dragon Energy and Kanye West. We're all going to wear MAGA hats. We're the counterculture. Like, no, I don't think that's actually happening.
No, it's not.
But the way I've been seeing people post on the right, they think it is.
You would think that Trump's support among black Americans went to 55%.
No.
Judging by the way a lot of conservatives, and I use that term very lightly, especially on Twitter, were reacting to this whole thing. Like I said, my take, I don't really care either way. I just like following the story.
Yeah. And Trump's support amongst African Americans has increased.
Yeah, the last I saw, it was up to about like 15%.
Yeah, that's what I've seen.
Some polls have shown it as high as 20. I don't think it's that high, but it's definitely higher than the 8 or 9% that he got in the election. And that's, if he was at like 8% and it's at 15, it's essentially doubled.
Yeah, but it's great to have African Americans on our side, but it's still not changing the results of elections like we saw with Roy Moore in Alabama, where, over 85% of African Americans all go for the Democrat. I just don't see any sort of shift on that whatsoever. I mean, Kanye West is promising. Maybe this is, a foreseer of things to come, but I don't know. It's been fun, though. I will say that, and the memes have been great.
Yeah, and Kanye himself even tweeted out, like, I know people talked about Kanye wanting to run for president. He tweeted out 2024, so hey, maybe that's gonna happen.
He even made a new song this week in support of Donald Trump.
Yeah, I mean, I want to say that a lot of people are thinking that this is all just a publicity stunt. I actually happen to agree with them. I do think that Kanye is using it as a publicity stunt, but at the same time, I do think that his support of Trump is genuine because of past actions that we've seen. I mean, he did meet with Trump Tower when he was president-elect. There was a concert. People have a video saying that, Kanye said, I didn't vote in 2016, but if I would have voted for Trump. So I do think he genuinely does support and like Trump. But at the same time, he is definitely using this as a publicity stunt, especially for the fact that he came out with his new single. And that him releasing a song in support of Donald Trump is not just him saying, you know what, I'm going to release a song. No, he's making money off of that song, and it's driving a lot of money there. Because there's at least one Trump supporter out there who went out and bought the song.
It's like what is that lady, Joy Villa or whatever?
Joy Villa, yeah.
It's the same phenomenon, but not Trump. Kanye West is already a star, one of the biggest stars of all time in rap. But, he's still on top. He hasn't fallen off with music, so it's interesting.
Kanye is one of those few types of guys that can pretty much do and say whatever they want, and it's not going to affect their career much. You can't say that about a lot of people, but Kanye could come out and just...
There is one thing that he tweeted about how we are part of a global family. I don't like him saying that so much. We definitely don't consider ourselves part of a global family, us being nationalists ourselves that, care about our country and our countrymen first and foremost. Kanye's heart is in the right place, but I don't think his mind is all there yet. But I don't know. He's been saying that he's been watching Candace Owen videos and Jordan Peterson videos. I guess he's going right where he might fix this.
And Scott Adams says. I think he was the Dilbert creator guy or something like that. He tweeted out some of his videos as well. So, like I said, I think it's just a publicity stunt. But here's what I would like to see. I would like to see in 2020 when times come around, and Michigan's still going to be a swing state, I would love to see Trump hold a rally in Detroit and have Kanye West come out there and perform a song in his rally. You don't think that would bring out a lot of people and maybe swing some votes? I think it probably would. And one of the tweets that Kanye put out was saying that Barack Obama was president for 8 years and nothing changed in Chicago. There was a lot of talk by Trump earlier in the campaign about wanting to fix the inner cities, and that was one of the things that he talked about in his campaign but hasn't really followed up on. So I have a feeling that, or at least I should say, I would like to see Trump work with Kanye to kind of make him like an ambassador to the black community. And I really think that that could go a long way, not necessarily to gain support among those people, but at least to kind of like, maybe present an alternative viewpoint that is definitely suppressed in their communities there, especially in big cities like Chicago and Detroit, where you have heavy black populations that vote Democrat. And, situations definitely are not improving for those people. So that's really all I have to say about that.
Yeah. But, with that all said, do you want to move on to the next story that we have?
Yes, I do. So the next story that we have up is Trump has hosted his first state dinner, this time with French President Emmanuel Macron. President Donald Trump and First Lady Melania welcomed French President Emmanuel Macron and his wife Brigitte to the White House on Tuesday for the first state dinner of Trump's presidency. Reporters and congressional Democrats were left off of the guest list, but some of the high-profile guests included Fox News Channel owner Rupert Murdoch and Apple CEO Tim Cook. The only Democrat in attendance was Louisiana Governor John Bel Edwards and his wife Donna, who were invited as custom when French leaders come because of Louisiana's deep French and Cajun roots. And, the actual state dinner, I think, was not really the most important part of Macron's visit to the White House.
I think the tree thing was much bigger.
Yeah, that was hilarious. They had, golden shovels, dude.
Yeah. They did this, they planted this oak tree out in front of the White House, and it was this big, photo shoot thing. But did you see, and, I'm not someone on Twitter, but I heard people talking about this, that apparently the tree's gone.
I honestly have not heard that at all. I haven't really followed up on that story. It very well might be true. It also very well might be false. I don't really know. One thing I do know is that when Trump was walking around with Macron, he definitely tried to make Macron look like the little guy in the situation the entire time.
They have very strange, offbeat chemistry with one another. It seems like they genuinely like each other, but I just don't get it. It just seemed like Trump was treating Macron like a child. He was holding his hand and pulling him along and stuff. It was very odd to witness, knowing that these are two world leaders that have definitely a lot of global influence in what they say and do, and just the way that they're interacting with each other. I don't know. I mean, I guess it went well. It went well, but I don't like Emmanuel Macron whatsoever. He's a terrible president. He has very poor approval ratings in France itself. He's definitely a globalist. He's not on our side of politics whatsoever. He spoke in front of Congress saying that we need to stay in the Paris Climate Accord.
Yeah.
And he received, a standing ovation for doing so. He's trying to be buddy-buddy with Donald Trump, but they don't see eye to eye on most things.
No, but I will say one last thing. The actual state dinner itself was planned by Melania Trump, and she did an outstanding job with that. Just the way that they got a bunch of cherry blossom trees lining the inside halls of the White House, and the entire area looked very nice. The decorations, table decorations, were all set out. And she was essentially in charge of making sure all that stuff went down very well. And it went, from what everyone is saying, it was a very nice evening, and it went very well. So I will have to give Melania Trump credit for, she was really the one who set up the state dinner, even though Trump technically was the one that was hosting it. So I will give her, a lot of credit where credit is due.
With that all said, though, let's go on to some of the stuff with Russia and Flynn.
Yes, so the FBI has cleared Flynn in the probe linking him to Russia. On Monday, the FBI announced that they had finished reviewing phone calls between former National Security Advisor Mike Flynn and the Russian ambassador to the U.S. and found no evidence of any wrongdoing. The House Intelligence Committee on Friday also released their 253-page report on alleged Russian influence on the 2016 election, finding no link between the Trump campaign and Russia. President Trump tweeted, calling the investigation a witch hunt, and added that, quote, "There should never have been a special counsel appointed." Which we know that's absolutely true. There never should have been a special counsel appointed. The entire Russian investigation, the Mueller Russian investigation, I could say, is a witch hunt at this point. I think we've gone to enough detail about that on past shows, but it's just nice to see that, at least the House's investigation has concluded. They've said that Flynn did nothing wrong, Trump did nothing wrong, there was no collusion, they weren't trying to, swing the election towards Donald Trump. They did, however, find out some stuff. They were, saying like, oh yes, Russia definitely did try to influence our election, blah, 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 all that sort of stuff, which I still don't think is actually that accurate. I mean, really, how many people actually had their votes changed by the $27 that people spend on ads on Facebook?
Yeah, it really is dependent on the wording. Russia influenced our election.
Right.
I don't deny that. There's evidence of them doing that. They do these cyber campaigns where they try to propagandize however they do. But that doesn't change people from voting. I don't think the Russians had any sort of influence in getting people out to the polls whatsoever. But, it's good to see with this Flynn stuff, they've, since the beginning of, the Russian collusion story, the Flynn stuff has been the stuff they have pointed to from the get-go ever since Trump got into office. This is the proof of, Russian collusion, and he's scot-free. Which, this is all being said, he did nothing wrong. But I don't think it's going to reach into the public consciousness that he did something wrong. Because, this is not something that they plaster on CNN headlines. Flynn is in the clear, no Russian collusion. It's all about the spin, and it's not something they want to spin. So
no, definitely not. And it's also one of those things where, a lot of people on the left, they like to point out the fact that I think Flynn, what was he charged with, like lying to the FBI or something like that?
Something along those lines.
Yeah, that's like their evidence of see, Trump did do something wrong. You see the Russia investigation. It's leading to all these charges against these people. Yet, no, it's not actually. I do think that the fact that the FBI has come out and announced that they've essentially cleared Flynn and the probe linked to Russia, I do think that if those charges do pursue against Flynn, Trump should pardon him. I don't think. Obviously the left is going to hate that, but Trump would definitely be in the right to do that. So that's one of those things that I don't know if will happen, probably won't, but should if the case comes up. Now, the next story that I want to get to, actually, I want to skip ahead just a couple of stories here, or there we go. So there was also something else that was involved with the whole investigation. I'm on slide 6 in case you're looking at it. The House panel has also found that James Clapper lied about leaking to CNN. So in one of the findings of the House Intelligence Committee's 253-page report is the not-so-shocking revelation that former Director of National Intelligence James Clapper not only leaked information about the now-discredited Steele dossier to CNN's Jake Tapper, but he also lied to Congress about it. And if you don't know, Clapper was rewarded with a CNN contract several months after he leaked the information. So the committee found that, quote, Clapper flatly denied discussing the Steele dossier or any other intelligence related to the Russian hacking of the 2016 election with journalists when questioned by Congress, but later acknowledged that he discussed the dossier and provided information to Jake Tapper. The briefing, and this is kind of when this whole thing started, the briefing of then-President-elect Trump by U.S. intelligence chiefs was held on January 6, 2017, and CNN's story and then BuzzFeed's subsequent publishing of the dossier occurred just 4 days later on January 10th. So it was because of that briefing of Trump that CNN and other media outlets went ahead with these stories of, the
Steele dossier,
and all that stuff.
That set the precedent to lead us into the Mueller probe.
Right. And that was all set up way back before.
If this doesn't happen, the Mueller probe isn't going anywhere.
Nope.
Which is crazy. We can just find these people flat out lying. We can find evidence that exonerates Flynn. But is that going to change the mind of your average Democrat that the Russians helped Donald Trump win the election?
Of course not.
No. They see themselves as eternally righteous. And they're not.
And even then, this isn't the first time that Clapper has lied to Congress. I mean, there's the very famous video of him when they're talking about whether or not the NSA is spying on Americans, and he said, no, they're absolutely not doing that. That comes out, just with the Snowden stuff that, yeah, actually they are. So Clapper is not someone who you trust, not someone who should be trusted. And if he says anything that sounds even somewhat controversial, the opposite is probably the truth. The guy lies out of his butt all the time. So, congratulations, Clapper. At least you got, a CNN contract after you leaked documents to CNN. So I really think that we need to start going after these people for doing this, especially leaking information. Maybe not necessarily, I know there's a lot of, there's not really a legal way that you can go about someone leaking non-top secret information. I know that it's wrong, but a lot of times they say that there's nothing technically illegal about that. But at some point you got to say, look, if you are a journalist who knowingly publishes information that is top secret, even if you don't know it's top secret, there should be punishments there.
Yeah.
And I think that, start with the people we hate the most. So, why not go after Jake Tapper first? I would absolutely love to see that guy hauled off in chains, along with James Clapper and everyone else.
But, they're the defenders of our democracy. They're the free press that, informs us. Even though they're openly deceiving us.
I was going to say, when people hide behind freedom of the press in order to publish lies and slander and biased information that can swing people's opinions, thus swinging their votes, thus changing the outcome of human history, there needs to be more scrutiny there with what you are and are not allowed to do. I firmly believe that.
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to publishing things that are outright lies, which we have seen happen again and again and again.
And they want to portray themselves as people that are fair and balanced.
No, I mean, anyone who has the word journalist in their bio, I automatically just discredit this person for having absolutely no moral character whatsoever.
Yeah. And we've gone over in the past, there's been studies on journalists.
Oh, yeah.
They have less of an ability than the average person to decipher bias, less intelligent than the average person, more emotional, more prone to what were some of the things?
Alcoholism or something?
Yeah, alcoholism was one of them, and drug abuse. Journalists, they're not sending their best.
Exactly.
Moving on from that, though, let's get into some of these confirmations.
So the Senate confirmed 2 high-profile people this week. First off, the Senate on Thursday voted to confirm Mike Pompeo as the next Secretary of State with a vote of 57 to 42. 7 Democrats voted yes, including 3 that I think we know why they voted for it. That was Heidi Heitkamp, Joe Manchin, and Joe Donnelly. All of them Democrats in states that Trump won by a lot of points that are all up for re-election, so they definitely voted for that.
They want that on their record that they're supporting
Exactly, trying not to lose their re-election. The second one is the Senate voted to confirm Richard Grenell as the next ambassador to Germany with a vote of 56 to 42. After that vote was held up for a very long time, I wasn't even sure if they were even going to get to that vote, but he will become the first openly gay U.S. ambassador. So, all the people talking about how much Trump hates the LGBT community, and yet he was strongly behind this guy. So, I don't know. You got Trump nominating a gay guy to be the ambassador to Germany. You got Kanye being all buddy-buddy. You got, we're going to get to the Korean War. All the things that they say that Trump's so bad at, and yet he actually isn't that bad at them.
Yeah, things definitely feel out of sync with how the news has been going lately. But I don't really have an opinion on Richard Grenell, but Mike Pompeo, I'm very glad to see his confirmation. I wasn't a fan of Rex Tillerson much whatsoever. I don't think he did that good of a job, so I don't think it'll be hard for Mike Pompeo to outdo him. And, already looking at his track record of what he's done in Korea, which we'll talk more about later, I would consider that the biggest story this week. Good stuff. I think he's a good person for the role. Yeah,
definitely. Pompeo is, I like to put people on my own little scale of, how pro-Trump are they for Trump's administration. Pompeo is way more pro-Trump than Rex Tillerson is, so I definitely think that is an improvement. But going on to the last story before we get into economic news, Admiral Jackson has withdrawn his VA Secretary nomination after some allegations came up. White House physician and Admiral Ronnie Jackson withdrew his nomination for VA Secretary on Thursday after allegations surfaced that Jackson once drank on duty and crashed a government vehicle. However, The U.S. Secret Service and other government officials have denied those claims, even saying that alcohol was not a factor in the 3 minor vehicle crashes that Jackson was a part of. One of them happened to actually be a car sideswiped the vehicle he was driving and hit the mirror. He had absolutely nothing to do with that. But it counts as technically him being part of a vehicle collision in a government vehicle, draws a lot of scrutiny. The claims were mostly spread by Montana Democrat Senator Jon Tester, which led to a tweet storm by Trump, him firing back against Tester, tweeting, quote, "Allegations made by Senator Jon Tester against Admiral/Dr. Ron Jackson are proving false. The Secret Service is unable to confirm, in fact they deny, any of the phony Democrat charges which have absolutely devastated the wonderful Jackson family. Tester should resign. The great people of Montana will not stand for this kind of slander when talking of a great human being. Admiral Jackson is the kind of man that those in Montana would most respect and admire, and now, for no reason whatsoever, his reputation has been slandered. Not fair, Tester." So I am happy that Trump is using this as an opportunity to attack, again, one of those Democrats in states that Trump won big time who's up for re-election. I don't think Tester is going to win re-election, and that's just me looking at, other stuff.
He's got his work cut out for him in a place like Montana.
And this definitely does not help him. In fact, I think that, I'm not going to say this is the final nail in his coffin, but it's definitely one of those things that people will remember. And whoever his opponent is, I know they haven't had their primary yet, but whoever his Republican opponent happens to be is definitely going to run with this story as the election draws closer. And I don't think that Tester is going to win re-election.
Yeah. So that's what we got for the top of the stack news this week. Let's go into some stories on the economy. So I got the first story here, and this is something that I definitely wanted to talk about when I first saw it. I got very excited, actually, when I saw it, because, I'm going to talk about it this Sunday.
Yeah.
And that is Bernie's plan to give everyone a job.
Yay!
On Monday, Senator Bernie Sanders released a plan to guarantee a government job that will give full health care benefits and a $15 hour wage or job training. So if you don't have the position, you'll have job training for the same amount of money and benefits. The plan calls for hundreds of projects in categories such as infrastructure, education, and the environment. Senators Kristen Gillibrand and Cory Booker have supported the bill, with Booker releasing a similar bill of his own. So have you read up a bit on the Sanders plan?
Absolutely not. I'm waiting for you to tell me about it.
Absolutely not. So yeah, it essentially, he didn't put a lot of details into the plan. Big surprise with the Bernie Sanders stuff. There's not details behind how you do this, but yeah, he just wants the government to start hundreds of new programs so we can guarantee every single person in this country not only has a job, but has a high-paying job. $15 an hour is not anything to scoff at.
Plus healthcare.
Yeah. So essentially, he's trying to make jobs an entitlement, which is just a terrible incentive when you think about it. What's the incentive to work hard in one of these government jobs if it's a guaranteed right for you to have this job? What's going to be the quality of people working in these positions if just anyone can have one? It's going to be extremely expensive. It's going to be a massive, increase in government scope and size. And will it be good in the long haul? Probably not. Now, they don't have the Senate or the House as of right now to even pass such a bill. And at the moment, only, Kristen Gillibrand, Cory Booker, and Sanders, all very far-left candidates, are even talking about this. But this is something they want, and this is something that, if they can make gains in the House, they'll try and push for things like this.
Yeah, give them 10 or 15 years, give them back give them back control of the government, and you'll see something like this go from just those 3 nut jobs supporting this to 40-50% of Congress wanting something similar to this. I mean, that's very similar to what happened in the Great Depression, what we did in the 30s just to put people to work. We started hundreds and hundreds of government projects. A lot of it had to do with national parks, building stuff. I mean, even if you're here in Texas and you go down to Gonzales, Texas, where the Come and Take It flag is famous from, if you go down to that little museum where they have a bunch of stuff, That museum only exists because in the 1930s they said, hey, we need to put people to work. Let's make a museum dedicated to the cannon that's famous from the Come and Take It flag. They built an entire little area out of there, put a lot of people to work. Great museum, not going to lie. But it's little things like that that I think of when I hear of them saying, you know, we want to do stuff like infrastructure and education and the environment. And that's all fine and dandy, wanting those things. But when you look at the cost and look at what actually will occur if you do that, it's just not something that this country needs right now.
And, you know, you mentioned the cost. So unemployment right now is like, what, 4% or so?
4.1 or 4.3, one of those two numbers, I think.
It's around there. That's still, you know, tens of millions of people.
That's technically full employment.
Yeah.
I think anything under like 4. Yeah, we're essentially at full employment right now.
Yeah.
Which I will say before you go on anything, that's both good and bad, because if you happen to be an unemployed person wanting a really good job, at full employment, there aren't as many high-paying good jobs available at that point. Because at this point, there are a lot more, I guess I could use the word, there are a lot more low-paying jobs available than high-paying jobs, because a lot of the low-paying jobs have shifted into high-paying jobs. A lot of part-time people have shifted to full-time jobs. That's part of the reason why you see slight income increases beginning right now. While at the same time, you know, we see all these really, really good numbers regarding unemployment that have come out recently. But at the same time, that unemployment figure has not changed very much, because you can have a net increase of 200,000 jobs a month and still only have like a 0.2% decrease in the unemployment rate over the course of an entire year, simply because there are so many millions of people that are both in work and out of work, and, you know, the amount of jobs that are available. And I think one of the biggest problems we have in this country right now, which has been a problem, is underemployment rather than unemployment. You have a lot of people that are college graduates who should be having good high-paying jobs that aren't able to find good high-paying jobs because they've already been filled, that are forced to go into stuff like, you know, working at McDonald's or something like that for a lower wage. So I know I kind of went off on a tangent, and I'll let you get back to it, but that's just one of those things that, you know, you have to keep in mind when you hear about these different numbers.
Yeah, so what I wanted to touch on was this cost.
Right.
So $15 an hour is the wage that they want to set for the minimum of these jobs. You know, say you work 40 hours, that's, you know, your standard
full-time
work. You do this for a year, you're making about $28,800. So you're not a rich person, but you're not hurting by yourself. You know, you can easily live off that kind of wage.
Yeah.
And on top of that, health benefits, which can range, you know, in the thousands. And given the job guarantee, and I'm not even factoring, you know, healthcare costs into this, which we'd have to do. Say 20 million people took up Bernie Sanders' offer to have this guaranteed job. This would cost us $576 billion.
Yeah.
This program alone.
That's $576 billion that we're not currently spending either.
Not even currently spending. No proposal on how you'd fund this, because, you know, the government doesn't make a profit. It's not known for you know, making any sort of profit on the things it does. But, you know, he expects us to take this seriously. This is the level of discourse that the left can even come up with. And we've been on this for quite a while, but I just wanted to, you know, really make a point of there's no details to this. Beyond what I've told you, Bobby, there isn't much to be specific.
And I was even wondering about that, because it didn't seem like we wrote that much down for this.
No.
But, you know, that makes sense when you think about it. There just isn't anything there.
So, crazy stuff, but, you know, to be expected from Bernie. So, moving on from there, we have some new Congressional Budget Office numbers that I just wanted to, you know, quickly touch on. So, according to the Congressional Budget Office, which, if you didn't know, that's kind of like a bipartisan part of Congress that gives projections on stuff like tax bills. They put the GDP growth for the fourth quarter of 2017 at 3.3%.
Which is really, really good.
Yeah, that is the highest growth level in 15 years that we've seen. The tax bill is projected to increase the GDP by 0.7% and increase non-farm payroll employment by 1.1 million jobs. So, some good promising stuff to see out of the CBO, and, you know, for the most part, the CBO is pretty bipartisan. It doesn't lean either way. In the past, we've seen bad numbers for us. So it's good to see some high numbers like 3.3%, which is great for GDP growth.
Yeah, absolutely. And the next story that we have is, kind of going back to those jobless numbers I was talking about. The Labor Department on Thursday said that initial jobless claims for state unemployment benefits dropped 24,000 to a seasonally adjusted 209,000 for the week ending April 21st, which is the lowest level since December of 1969. Economists had forecasted claims falling to 230,000 in the last week. So that's a good, 21,000 under what people actually thought. The unemployment rate, here's the number we were looking for earlier. The unemployment rate is currently at a 17-year low of 4.1%, and that is not far from the Federal Reserve's forecast of 3.8% by the end of this year. So even the Fed is predicting that unemployment's going to be at 3.8 by the end of the year. And, we've seen really good job numbers going so far. We've seen wages starting to rise a little bit, which is all good. Like here, weekly jobless claims, the lowest level since, almost 50 years, 49 years. It's really, really good. So hopefully that'll continue. And I don't really see anything that's going to show that that's going to drastically change in the opposite direction anytime soon.
Yes. And the last thing that we want to touch on for the economy is some very, very good stuff in regards to the trade deficit.
Yes. So on Thursday, data release shows that the trade deficit in goods narrowed by 10.3% to $68 billion, which is the first decline in 7 months. Economists had forecasted the deficit to be $73.4 billion. So you're already like $5 billion under what people expected the deficit to be. And we also have some data from another guy here, Ian Shepherdson, who is the chief economist at Pantheon Macroeconomics, who forecasted a goods deficit of $69 billion, which is, a lot closer than what most economists thought of $73.4. He said, quote, "If we're right, GDP forecast for the first quarter will be revised up by about half a percentage point." So what was that number that we just used last time?
3.3 for the fourth quarter of 2017 is what the CBO says.
So, obviously that's fourth quarter and we're talking about first quarter, but it can't be too far off. Usually first quarter is a little bit less than the fourth quarter. So, say fourth quarter was at, 3.3. So you're probably looking at about 2.8, 2.9. So you might be looking back at 3.3% for the first quarter or something very, very similar to that, which would be really, really good.
Yeah, which, is still solid stuff. Doesn't say that the economy's, going to collapse or anything, even if you go down into the 2.8, 2.9 range.
And that's still higher than what we've had, for many, many months over the last decade or so. And people talk about recessions. The definition of recession is 2 quarters or more of negative GDP growth. When you're growing at 3%, that's not a decline in your GDP. You know, if all of a sudden there was a quarter of only 1.2% GDP growth, and then another quarter of 0%, then another quarter of declining, that's when you start to worry. But when you see your GDP growth, consistently around that 2.5% to 3% margin, which is what we've seen over the last few quarters, that's indicative of a very strong, very healthy economy, not one that's about to collapse in the next 10 seconds. So, economy looking very well right now.
And, in terms of this deficit narrowing so, dramatically as of late, this has to do with the executive orders mainly on tariffs that Trump has put into place on steel and aluminum, and also the renegotiations that we've seen on trade deals. And, just looking at the track record of things so far and the direction we're going, we're currently, in NAFTA negotiations, this trade deficit can go down even more so in the future.
And I think it probably will.
With that said, let's go on to some immigration news for the week.
So the first story that we have in immigration is about the caravan. I know there's some recent developments that happened just this morning, but let's go back to what happened earlier this week. So President Trump has called on Homeland Security Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen to not let members of the infamous caravan of Central American migrants into the United States. Trump tweeted on Monday, quote, "Despite the Democrat-inspired laws in sanctuary cities and the border being so bad and one-sided, I've instructed the Secretary of Homeland Security not to let these large caravans of people into our country. It is a disgrace. We're the only country in the world so naive. Wall." Nielsen has since warned the caravan that they could face prosecution, detention, and deportation, saying, quote, "For those seeking asylum, all individuals may be detained while their claims are adjudicated efficiently and expeditiously, and those found not to have a claim will be promptly removed from the United States." Trump has also suggested tying immigration to the ongoing NAFTA renegotiations. So I know that there's some very recent developments. In fact, it's happening as we're recording this right now, that there is a big protest that's going on in the border near San Diego. In fact, on the beach where the border fence reaches the beach down there, there was some people, there's a lot of the, some of the migrants were protesting there. Some were just literally just sitting there on top of the border fence that's currently there as a protest. A lot of people from the United States side come down there. And it's like, okay, what do you do at this point when these people are just sitting there?
It's crazy, so far we've had 90 members of the caravan actually make it to the border and be stopped. And all of them applied for asylum. Now, Jeff Sessions has said this week that if you come to the country and apply for asylum and you didn't apply for asylum in the first safe country that you left, because, there's actually rules about asylum.
Yeah.
We're just rejecting you. And, if you were accepted in, say, Mexico for asylum, we're rejecting you. So we're not going to let these people in for the most part, but they're still coming. Now, there has been reports that of the people that have made it to the border so far, some people have actually made it through.
A few, yeah.
That's to be expected. But at the moment, they say in Tijuana, which is, near San Diego, where most of these people are trying to come through, there's around 400 members of the caravan currently there waiting. It might be even higher as of now. We don't know. It's hard to be for sure. But, yeah, there is an organization called Showing Up for Racial Justice, which is one of the groups down at the border that is protesting that you were mentioning, that has said that they already have 75 people in the state of California willing and ready to house members of the caravan. So it is a battle for, enforcement of our laws, enforcement of our border, and we are up against all these different NGO groups that want to bring every single member of the caravan here and want more people to come here.
More caravans.
And if we don't put our foot down and stop this stuff now, they'll just come. They'll feel empowered. They already feel entitled. We got to show them that we don't allow this stuff.
No, and I think, in terms of what they've done so far, and by they I mean the government, in terms of just, saying, look, if you haven't applied for asylum in Mexico, we're going to deny your asylum request. If you sneak into the U.S. and you're part of the caravan, you're going to get arrested. I mean, that kind of goes to show there's already those 4 people that they said they already entered the U.S. illegally through a canyon and then hopped over the border fence that's there. One of them was a pregnant woman. These are definitely people who you need to deport immediately, especially the pregnant women, because if they have kids in the U.S., those are automatically citizens and then can qualify for any sort of welfare programs. It's extremely hard to deport these people at that point, because you can't deport a U.S. citizen, even though if you're an anchor baby, I think you should be the first to go at that point, along with you and your family. They talk a lot about, you don't want to, why are you splitting up the families? I don't want to split up families. I'll send the entire family back with them. Oh, you're not going to tell me what country you're from? I'm going to take a map, throw a dart at it. Wherever that lands, that's where you're going. So good luck with you. But yeah, at this point, if all they do is stand there and protest, it probably isn't going to make too much of a difference, but that doesn't stop people from coming. That's not going to stop people from applying. I mean, they can apply for asylum all they want. The important thing is us rejecting their asylum request. That's the important thing here. And if they want to just, stand on the Mexican side of the border or sit on top of the fence, which, I don't think we should be allowing them to just sit on top of the fence. If anything, put razor wire or something up there to prevent them from doing that.
Or build a wall.
Exactly. 30-foot wall, as we've been saying. And, in terms of the wall...
If the wall prototypes are there, they wouldn't be sitting on those walls.
No, definitely not. So that is a priority that we need to do, and, I'm not going to say that I'm necessarily happy about the way things are going, but I'm definitely not, angry about the government's response to the whole caravan situation. They have been pretty good, the United States government, about, responding to people's, outrage about the caravan. So
yeah. From the caravan, let's go on to another issue related to illegal aliens, and that is DACA. So we got some bad news this week in regards to the case on DACA, and that is on Tuesday, U.S. District Judge John Bates ruled that the Trump administration must restate their arguments for ending the DACA program within 90 days. After that 90-day period barring reprieve, the program must accept new first-time applicants. Bates said that the initial ending of the program lacked legal reasoning and invited the Department of Homeland Security to try again, this time providing a fuller explanation for the determination that the program lacked statutory and constitutional authority. So this is pretty upsetting. DACA, from its inception, was an unconstitutional action by President Obama.
Executive order.
Yeah.
It's not even a law.
President Obama himself has said that he didn't have the authority to do this and that it was a temporary measure. And now that we live in a world where anything related to illegal aliens, you gotta kick it down the can. Even in general for immigration, stuff like TPS is just supposed to be a kick down the can forever. We can't be doing this, okay? We've talked in the past on DACA. The fraud rates for DACA is around 50%. At the end of the Obama administration, the acceptance rate for applications for DACA was over 97%, so just anyone was allowed. How do you even confirm this stuff? They're undocumented, as they say. How do we know what your age was when you came into this country if you don't have a birth certificate to prove it? It's crazy that we even have to justify it. It's completely within the president's ability to nullify an executive order from a previous executive. It's just it's really incensing to me.
And Trump was even extremely generous by saying, look, if you're on the program, we'll let your term of the program expire.
We gave them...
essentially giving them at least 2 extra years.
Yeah, we gave them the ability to renew their current status. But now if we don't do anything within this 90-day period that can, give our justification why DACA shouldn't exist, we just have to take new applicants, apparently. It doesn't make sense, but...
That being said, I know that the Trump administration is going to respond to that by, representing their policies, and then it's going to go through the whole courts, and we know how that's going to turn out. But that being said, I think what we really need to start doing, and I kind of mentioned this last week, is... God, the House has the ability to impeach judges. We really need to start going after these freaking judges all over here that are blatantly ignoring the Constitution and issuing rulings like this, especially judges in the Ninth Circuit and I think at the Fourth Circuit as well. Those are the ones that you really need to hit hard at, especially, what's this Judge John Bates? Go after him. And I really say, be absolutely open about the fact that you're just flat out going against any judge that stands in the way of the Trump administration getting things that we want to do done. And I think that that's something that definitely needs to happen for the sake of our country. So,
most definitely. Going on from there, though, let's talk about something that I mentioned, TPS status.
Yes, the Trump administration is canceling the TPS status of roughly 9,000 Nepalese immigrants. They were given the TPS status in 2015 after a massive 7.8 magnitude earthquake struck the country and left another roughly 9,000 people dead. And Homeland Security Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen announced that the Nepalese immigrants have until June 24, 2019, so just over a year from now, to leave the U.S. or be subject to deportation. So, hey, we're being generous. Look, you've been able to stay in the United States for the last roughly 3 years, so you have another year, and then you got to go back. It's temporary protected status. Temporary meaning there's a set time frame. The set time frame we're given is you got 4 years total, 2015 to 2019. Go back.
Yeah, and this isn't as egregious a case as we've seen with, the temporary protected status of El Salvadoran migrants or Honduran migrants. But this is another instance where, hey, this was temporary. We didn't give this to you as a means to immigrate here. This is just for you to be safe for the time being. Get your stuff together and go back. Let
your country rebuild.
And, we are giving you the time, too. If you want to immigrate here, do so. But you have to do this on your own part. We didn't just give you a blanket check to come here.
And bring your entire family here. Have kids that become citizens. And you know there's got to be at least one of them that did that. So I'm not sure how that exactly qualifies for citizenship if you're someone who's on a TPS and then you have a kid. I'm assuming that kid would be a U.S. citizen. I mean,
that would be
illegal
a US
immigrants
citizen.
can just walk into this country and have a kid, and that kid's a U.S. citizen. So I'd assume this would be the same thing. So, yeah, at this point, I hate to say it, but it's true. We should be able to deport legal U.S. citizens back to the country that they belong in. I don't think that should be a controversial thing to say.
Yeah. Going on from there now, let's talk about some illegal aliens caught near the border.
Yeah, the Border Patrol agents, along with the Laredo, Texas Police Department, discovered 56 illegal aliens at a residence after a request for assistance by DHS investigators. The illegal aliens were determined to be from Mexico, Guatemala, and Honduras, and were all processed accordingly for deportation. So, yeah.
Here's another instance here on our, in our home state of Texas. On the show, many times we talk about instances where we just get these large swaths of illegal aliens we find. And, I see Democrats always saying, oh, the border's not an issue. The number of people coming is down. There's less of a need now for a wall. No, we're still dealing with this. As a Texan, this is an issue that pertains to us. It's not something we want overlooked.
Yeah, definitely not. So, and if there's one house that has 56 here, how many more houses have, who knows how many more illegal aliens? They refer to it as a stash house. I mean, that's what it is. It's a stash house.
Yeah.
And there's tons and tons of them all over the country, especially near the border. And, if it weren't for the DHS investigators asking the Border Patrol and Laredo Police Department to help, who knows if we even would have actually caught these people.
Yeah, which goes to show it is very important to have cooperation across all levels of governments to actually stop these illegal aliens, which is why fighting sanctuary city policies
and sanctuary state policies
at this point is a very important concern for the administration.
Absolutely.
Let's move on now, though, to a follow-up story on something we talked about many months ago now, I believe.
Yeah, and I'll just say the outcome of this story is something that needs to happen a lot more. So, do you remember Enzo Luis Bracamontes?
I remember the story. I didn't remember his name in particular, but yes.
He was the illegal alien cop killer who, back in January, made headlines for laughing in court and saying that he regretted not killing more people. Well, he's been given the death penalty, so claps. Thank you, Judge, for giving him that. His January court tirade, including him shouting, and, pardon my language, I'm just quoting exactly what he said, quote, "I wish I had killed more of the motherfuckers," and he then promised to, quote, "kill more, kill whoever gets in front of me, there's no need for a fucking trial." Well, he was sentenced to death for the 2014 multi-county killing rampage, murdering Sacramento County Sheriff's Deputy Danny Oliver and Placer County Sheriff's Detective Michael Davis Jr. I really think that we do need to step up the penalty for illegal aliens who commit crimes, especially murder. I definitely think that, I've said in the show before that my stance on the death penalty goes back and forth, but if you're an illegal alien in this country and you kill anybody, hell, even rape anybody, you should get the death penalty. And I'm not talking about no death penalty that gets drawn out over the next 20 years. I'm talking you get the death penalty, take them out back and hang them or shoot them. Right then and there. Get it over with. It's cheaper that way. They're not supposed to be in this country to begin with. Why the hell are we even giving them legal representation in our court system? They shouldn't be able to, appeal that verdict to a higher court. This shouldn't even, frankly, this guy's right. There is no need for a trial at all. If you're an illegal alien who's convicted of anything, you should be executed right there on the spot. Hell, do it in the courtroom for all I care. Use this guy, use any of these people that do this, and make an example out of them. Say, look, if you're an illegal alien in this country and you kill someone, you rape someone, this is what's going to happen to you. We are not going to be all cuddly little, fairy princess about it. You're going to die, and you deserve to die at that point.
Yes.
I rest my case.
With that said, let's move on to some stuff out of New York. We have some stuff from Andrew Cuomo. During a press conference broadcast on YouTube and Twitter on Wednesday, New York Governor Andrew Cuomo announced his plan to sue Immigration and Customs Enforcement unless the agency immediately ended their, quote, reckless and unconstitutional enforcement actions. He asserts that the decision was in response to an alarming increase in raids that he said endangers public safety. Quote, I think it's time a state stood up to ICE and make this case and let them know that people have rights. New York is a sanctuary state.
Endangers public safety. Yeah, arresting MS-13 gang members that are terrorizing your communities is endangering public safety.
We were just talking last week about, last week on Long Island, the MS-13 out there has put hits on the police officers out there.
Yeah.
And yet us enforcing the law is endangering the people. Endangering the public safety. Okay, I don't give a shit if we endanger the lives of these goddamn illegal aliens. They're not supposed to be here to begin with. But every single life we lose to these people is one that we shouldn't have. And now we live in such a crazy political landscape. We have the governors of states now trying to sue branches of the government for doing their job. A job that, he talks about how we're endangering the public safety because, when ICE has to go into New York, they don't have the assistance of the police there. But whose fault is that? That's not ICE's fault. That's the legislator of New York's fault.
That's your fault, Andrew Cuomo.
Yeah, he signed the law that allows them to do so. So it's insane, where it's considered endangering public safety by getting criminal migrants off the streets. I don't know.
And then him going to let them know that people have rights. You can determine what you believe is a human right or not. But if you're in this country illegally, I don't give a shit what your rights supposedly are. If you're in this country illegally, you have to go back. If you fight back, we'll kill you. If you've killed someone, we'll still kill you. You shall not believe... I'm sorry, let me rephrase that. You don't belong in this country. You don't deserve to be in this country. And if we have the ability to remove you, we will. If you fight back, we'll fight back. And you, little Andrew Cuomo up there, saying, this is endangering public safety, you're allowing these people who have been terrorizing your communities, who commit murders, who commit rapes, who put out hits on police officers. That is endangering the public safety. Getting rid of those people is not endangering the public safety. If anyone's endangering the public safety, it's you sitting in that office.
You're endangering your own public by serving people you're not supposed to. These aren't your constituencies. Their jurisdiction is to foreign nations. It's insane. We're just repeating ourselves, but it just blows my mind that this is what we're dealing with.
And yet there's so many people out there that would flat out completely agree with him.
Yeah.
And these people are insane.
You see it all the time now. They're calling ICE the new Gestapo. It's so stupid.
We really need to really step up and look at who we allow to vote in this country. I hate to say it, but it's true.
Yeah.
Let's go to the next
moving
story.
on now, though, we have a story out of California. Mombase Kulabalo Patara, an LAPD officer, was arrested on Tuesday trying to smuggle 2 illegal aliens into the country in southwestern San Diego County. They were arrested at a U.S. Border Patrol checkpoint 12 miles from the border. Mombase claims that his 2 passengers were both U.S. citizens, but they were not. Mm-hmm. If convicted, he faces 5 years in prison.
So there you have it. Even your LAPD, an officer, is trying to help smuggle illegal aliens.
People given the authority to uphold the law are just openly breaking the law out there because they don't care. Now, when this happened, Mombase first pulled out his badge and said, "Oh, I'm off duty," and he had his sidearm with him. Trying to use his authority granted to him to protect the law to break it.
Yeah.
For illegal aliens. But, things aren't looking good for him. It is likely that he'll face those 5 years in prison, as he deserves to.
I was going to say, let's hope he gets the 5 years in prison, definitely.
Yeah, he'll have some time to think about what he's done.
Yeah. Probably won't change his mind.
Yeah. But moving on to our last story for immigration this week, we got some new numbers on ICE that you want to talk about.
Yeah, there's some really, really important financial information here, and this is one of those things where if you are listening to this podcast, I really highly hope that you use this next segment and bring it up to just tell people just how bad the cost of illegal immigration actually is. So, according to new 2016 ICE data that's been published by the Government Accountability Office, the federal government paid a bed rate of $127.82 per day to house each illegal alien detained by ICE. This works out to $46,654.30 for every illegal alien detained for 365 days. Now, granted, most illegal aliens are not going to be detained for 365 days. That's why we use the whole by day rate. Continuing on, the fiscal year 2018 data is estimated that the bed rate will increase from $127 to $133.99, which comes out to $48,906.35. Now, the average income for an American aged 15 years or older, according to the U.S. Census Bureau, was $46,550. This means that the cost to the federal government to house an illegal alien for an entire year is roughly $104 more than the average American makes in income in a year. Now, obviously that's bad. Yes. But, they talk about, we want free college and stuff. I just thought about throwing in some other data here to show you exactly how bad things are. Now, like I said, your average illegal immigrant that is detained is not going to be detained for 365 days, which is, as I said, why they use the per day number.
Yeah.
According to the College Board's trend in college pricing, the tuition rate and fees for the 2017-2018 school year was, for private colleges, $34,740, which comes out to $95 a day. For in-state residents at public colleges, it's $9,970, which comes out to $27 per day. And for out-of-state residents at public universities, $25,620, which comes out to $70 per day. Meaning, remember, the first number I said at the very beginning, the bed rate for an illegal immigrant for one day is $127.82. The highest price of any of those, which is a private college, comes out to $95 per day. Meaning, for every single illegal immigrant that you have locked up for one day, you could essentially pay for a person's one day of their college tuition plus the college tuition for an in-state resident at a public college as well. Meaning, you want free college? Get rid of illegals and then shift that money over.
Yeah.
Because if you look at that per day number, which is, the most accurate way that you can do it, you could pay for free college for people. But instead, that money's going to pay and house illegal immigrants in detention.
You could pay for free college and have money left over.
Exactly.
But, this is money that we shouldn't have to be spending, but we do because these people come here. And they're draining us because they come here. Fiscally draining us because they come here. Center for Immigration Studies has done the numbers on this. It only costs around $10,000 to deport an illegal alien. It costs almost 5 times that to keep them in detention for a year. But, they always want to say, deportation is so expensive, you can't do that or whatever. Center for Immigration Studies has also done the numbers on legalization. The fiscal drain for each illegal alien to be legalized to stay here is around $65,000. So what is the fiscally responsible option if you want to have all these social welfare programs? It's deport these people. They talk about, they pay all these taxes, and half of them do. But they still don't make enough to pay for their fiscal burden as of now.
It's still a net drain.
It is still a net drain. So the only reasonable thing to do is to deport these people. Build a goddamn wall and don't let them come here so we don't have to house these people in detentions before we send them back. It's frustrating because you think about what we lose out on because we have to pay for these people. Like you said, we could pay for millions of people to go to college.
Yeah, maybe not provide free college for everyone, but for every illegal immigrant, you could pay for one person for one day.
I mean,
and have more left over.
They talk about how we have 13 million illegal aliens in the country, which is probably wrong. It's probably much more than that.
Probably double that.
Let's just say it's 13 million. That's much more than we have people in college right now in this country. You could pay for everyone to go to college. But you can't have that because you have illegal aliens.
A lot of whom are in college.
Yeah. Who, we've talked about in this program with Korean college craziness, the colleges are now making funds to pay for these people to go to college.
They're providing free immigration lawyers for them, too. Our school even did that.
There's a lot of people that would like to have free pro bono lawyer work for them, I'd imagine. But they're not giving that to the people that are actually citizens of this country. They're giving it to foreign nationals who break laws. It's crazy.
It's a clown world, my friend.
Very much so. But with that all said, that was it for immigration this week. Let's talk a bit about the 2018 elections. Now, the first story that we have is kind of humorous. So, Shiva Ayyadurai, I'm probably saying his name wrong. It's an Indian name.
Sounds about right to me.
Shiva, a Senate challenger to Elizabeth Warren, filed last Sunday a federal lawsuit against the city of Cambridge, Massachusetts, for demanding him to take down his sign calling Elizabeth Warren a fake Indian. Since March 17th, Shiva's campaign bus has sported identical signs on both sides with photos of himself and Warren with the phrase, "Only a real Indian can defeat the fake Indian." Cambridge building inspector Brandon Viginault has threatened the campaign with $300 in fines a day for lacking the appropriate approval and permits for the signs. So what's happening in this case is Shiva also owns businesses.
Okay.
And he's kept the bus parked in front of the businesses in his parking lot or whatever. So the building inspector in Cambridge is using his ownership of the property to try and fine him for a vehicle he owns. This is what they're doing. Because they're so offended that, a real Indian is calling out a fake Indian like Elizabeth Warren. But, it's so lefty out there in Massachusetts. This is just the kind of stuff they do.
And, I guarantee you that if that bus was just a regular bus that didn't have, campaign slogans and logos on the side of it, and it was just parked out there being owned by the same guy, that tenant probably wouldn't care as much. In fact, probably wouldn't even care at all. Although it is, Massachusetts, so, who knows how far those people go. But you know what? I'm going to go out and say I kind of support this real Indian guy, this Shiva Ayyadurai.
Very unlikely to win.
Of course not. I'm, probably less than 1% of the vote, I would bet. But hey, go for it, dude. Go for it.
Yeah.
Now, the next story that we'll talk about is good news that has happened, and that is that the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals ruled Friday that Texas's new version of its voter ID law can go into effect, overturning a lower court ruling that tried to block the law. The new version of the law made changes to meet requirements set forth by a previous Fifth Circuit Court ruling that struck down the original law. The new law includes a longer list of IDs that are acceptable for voting purposes. Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton, who we've both met, hailed the ruling, saying, quote, "The court rightfully recognized that when the legislature passed Senate Bill 5 last session, it complied with every change the Fifth Circuit Court ordered to the original voter ID law. Safeguarding the integrity of our elections is essential to preserving our democracy." So, because of this, the Texas voter ID law is A-OK to go for the 2018 midterm elections. So, very, very good news at that point.
Very good stuff on that. So the last story that we have for the 2018 election portion of the show is about the White House releasing a new questionnaire for receiving the backing of Donald Trump. If anyone wants to get the endorsement of President Donald Trump, they're given this questionnaire. And I'm just going to go through the different questions it has. The options are yes or no, and then it provides you a box to give your reasoning.
Okay.
So the questions are, do you support or oppose President Trump's appointment of Neil Gorsuch to the United States Supreme Court? Do you support or oppose President Trump's decision to withdraw from the Trans-Pacific Partnership, a multinational trade agreement? Do you support or oppose President Trump's executive order to suspend the issuance of visas and other immigration benefits to nationals of countries of Iran, Libya, Syria, Somalia, Sudan, and Yemen? Do you support or oppose the repeal of Obamacare's individual mandate within the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017? Do you support or oppose the president's intention to withhold foreign security assistance to Pakistan? Do you support or oppose President Trump's infrastructure initiative, which calls for $200 billion in federal funds to spur at least $1.5 trillion in infrastructure investments with partners at the state, local, tribal, and private level? On January 30th, 2018, President Trump released a framework for the following four proposals to reform our immigration system: establishing a $25 billion trust fund for the border wall system, ports of entry and exit, and northern border improvements; 2, promote nuclear family migration by allowing immigration sponsorship of spouse and minor children only, ending the visa lottery program; and lastly, provide legal status for DACA recipients and certain other DACA-eligible illegal aliens. Do you support or oppose President Trump's framework for immigration reform? And lastly, do you support or oppose President Trump's imposition of 25% tariffs on steel imports and 10% tariffs on aluminum imports? So I just wanted to go through those different questions because it really gives you a lot of insight on what actually matters to the White House right now. You know, they're looking at the 2018 midterms as a do-or-die moment for the presidency. If we lose the House, you know, the next 2 years are going to be much tougher to get anything done than we had in these first 2 years of his presidency. And he's really showing right now what matters to him and what you need to do to receive his endorsement. And I think it shows that he has really clear thought of mind and what he wants to get done in these last 2 months before, or 2 years before his re-election. Do you have any thoughts on the questionnaire that he put out?
Yeah, the only thoughts that I have is there was that one question, the really long one that you read off there, that had that kind of like 4 points there. And number 4, the whole provide legal status for DACA recipients or other, DACA eligible illegal aliens. Just because that question is on there doesn't necessarily mean that's what the government wants to do, but what they're really trying to do is just see where people stand on these issues as well. Because what they're really trying to do is, also figure out where do these congressional, excuse me, bring these people that are not only in Congress, but people that are, maybe primary challengers to people that are in Congress, really see, okay, where do these people stand, and, who should we support, who should we push, do we want to support a guy that's a primary challenger to someone that's already in office? Do we want to just go ahead and only support the person that's already in office? And where do the people that are already in office actually stand on these issues as well? Because we want to know who's on our side and who's not. Because going forward, that's going to tell us, who's the enemy within the within the GOP at this point. So yeah, that's really all I wanted to say.
Yeah. So with that all said, let's move on to the bottom stack for national news we have this week. We just have a couple stories. The first thing I want to touch on real quick is Natalia Veselnitskaya, the Russian lawyer who met with Donald Trump Jr. at Trump Tower during the 2016 general election.
Right.
There was a lot of controversy around this, especially, shortly after Trump entered the White House. She has come out to Associated Press this week and said that the Mueller probe has not contacted her whatsoever.
Which is fascinating, because part of the thing that a lot of people that support the Mueller probe like to point out is the fact that Donald Trump Jr. met with her at Trump Tower.
Yes.
That's part of the reason why they think there's collusions, because of that meeting. And yet, if this Mueller probe...
This is one of the biggest evidence points that they point to.
It's probably the biggest. And yet, she hasn't been contacted at all?
No.
You'd think she would be a key witness in the thing.
Instead, we have the Mueller probe going after Michael Cohen's office.
Yeah, going after bank records in not trade deals, and going after
stuff related to Stormy
Daniels. Stuff
that
happened decades ago. Even.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, I don't care who Trump sold a property to back in 2001. That's not doesn't have anything to do with, alleged Russian influence over Trump in the 2016 election, especially when Trump didn't even decide to run until 2015.
Yeah.
Granted, he probably, explored the idea probably back by about 2013, 2014, but still. Just saying.
Yeah, but this is just something I wanted to bring up because it's kind of shocking that someone so key to the Russian collusion narrative has not even been contacted whatsoever. And that's the danger of these special counsels. You can't put definitive scope on them. We never put a definitive scope on Mueller. He can just do whatever he wants. And, he's not getting down to brass tacks about even what is supposedly supposed to be the Russian collusion narrative. It's kind of crazy stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Moving on from there, we got some stuff on Colexit to do an update on.
Yeah, so if you remember last week, we talked about, or it might have been the prior week before that, we talked about how there was that ballot initiative to split California into 3 states, and that initiative actually got the required amount of signatures to appear on the 2018 ballot. But there's also the Yes California movement, which is to actually fully secede the state from the United States. That's what this upcoming story that we're about to talk about is dealing with. So, California's Secretary of State Alex Padilla announced that a ballot proposal to let California secede from the U.S. has been cleared to gather signatures. Advocates have until mid-October to gather the 365,800 signatures of registered voters required to get it on the ballot. The ballot proposal would let voters decide in 2020 during that election, and if passed, would hold a second election a year later to affirm the decision and then start the process of becoming an independent country. Luis Marinelli, who is the co-founder of the independence advocacy group called Yes California, said, quote, "We realize it may seem like a long time to wait, but we need time to have a serious dialogue with the people of California about why they should support the independence referendum by voting yes. The voters need to make an informed decision when they go to the polls to determine California's political future." Marinelli also says that the group, Yes California, has grown 4 times its size since Trump became president, now sitting at roughly 44,000 members. Now, here's something interesting that I was looking up when researching Yes California. It's a progressive group. It's a left-wing progressive group. But one of the things that they actually say they're quite conservative on is the whole federal government situation with taxes. Because what they believe is that because California being part of the United States, they don't like seeing taxes that Californians pay go to other things that aren't pro-California, such as illegal immigration and things like that. That the tax money from California citizens is being used for things like ICE and the Border Patrol and, anything else that they don't like. And because they don't like that, they think that their taxes should stay within the state, and they believe that they are better able to determine how their own state, or, should I say their own country at that point, can handle their own tax situation. So it's interesting that they actually did say that they side with they use the term right-wing beliefs, but it's, one of those things that, hey, maybe we can agree with the left on some things.
Yeah. And, we've talked on many times before, we'd be fine if California wanted to be its own country. We'd be fine with it. Electorally, it would help us,
yeah,
especially.
Definitely.
And, they'd have less senators. So, I hope Colexit happens. I doubt it will. It's kind of major to do something of this nature, but
I would be really curious to see what happens if in 2018, in this upcoming midterm, the break California into 3 states thing passes, and then in 2020, the referendum to just go independent, be your own country passes. And then, obviously then a year later, at least Yes California, unlike the other group, this group actually has plans of how they would go forth and do it. So I actually, as much of a left-wing organization as they are, I applaud them for thinking long-term about just, frankly, logistical matters of how would you actually go about seceding, rather than just say, you know what, screw it, let's just see what people think about breaking into 3 states. No, they're actually thinking about, okay, how are we going to do this? How long is it going to take? Let's, have a dialogue. Let's not rush the thing by saying, let's do this in 2018. Let's put an initial ballot initiative in 2020, see what people think. If it passes, then do it again just to make sure that that's legit. Don't just do a one-time vote that people might screw with. Actually draw this thing out and do it the right way. So to them, I say, I don't like you people, but I like the way that you're going about it.
Yeah. So our last story for the bottom of the stack of the national news before we do some current college craziness is about Illinois. Now, we've talked in the past about the fiscal crisis that's in Illinois, and this is an update on that. So Moody's and S&P have recently affirmed that Illinois is one notch above junk status as the state prepares to borrow a $500 million bond, and a downgrade is likely to come within the next year. The state continues to run a deficit despite $5 billion in new taxes for 2018. In terms of this new upcoming bond that they're having to pay for, because their credit rating is so low, they will have to pay a 2.1% higher interest rate than some of the better states as far as credit ratings are concerned, such as Illinois, Iowa, or Missouri. So 2.1% interest on a $500 million bond is
It's a lot of money.
2.1% more than what other states have to pay. So they're already having, to pay percentages on top of that. And their citizens are now $5 billion poorer. And they still have an unstable government that is going to further fall into a fiscal crisis. So it's not good stuff.
No, definitely not. And it's a shame that you have states like Illinois that can just openly, I mean, granted, yeah, every state has its own ability to run itself however it wants, within reason, but just the fact that they allowed themselves to get to this point, it's like, man, it's crazy.
Yeah, and in, one of the most blue states, I mean, outside of Chicago, it's fairly red, but Chicago is such a large and heavy presence on the state, it's so solidly blue in their legislature and, both their House of Representatives and their Senate. And those are the ones that are responsible for getting them in this mess. Now, I believe they do have a Republican governor, though.
They do have a Republican governor. I think he's up for re-election again this year. I'm not sure how the polling is going for that. I wouldn't be surprised if he loses because he isn't that popular in the state. But, it's just one of those things where it's like, okay. Not looking good for Republicans when, you're in a far blue state like Illinois, and yet you say, I'm a Republican, yet you allow this to happen in your state. Yeah. Not so good at all.
Not good stuff. But with that all said, let's go on to some current year college craziness.
Hey, keep talking.
Current year college craziness, the segment of the show where we talk about the crazy stuff that happens on college campuses here and abroad, but predominantly here because, we got the craziest. We got the best of the best when it comes to the worst of the worst. And for our first story, we are going to Fresno State.
Yeah, talk about the worst.
This is a follow-up story.
Talk about the worst of the worst. So, Randa Jarrar, who is the Fresno State University professor who was criticized last week for calling the late Barbara Bush a racist and a war criminal, is in the news again, after this time tweeting the Arizona State University crisis hotline number as her own personal number. She posted it to her now private Twitter account saying, quote, "Here's my number, okay?" and then posting the number. According to Arizona State University, the hotline usually receives about 5 calls a week. On Wednesday afternoon, one day after Jarrar's post, the line was still getting between 50 to 70 calls per hour. Eugene Ju, a doctor at Vanderbilt University Medical Center, tweeted to Jarrar telling her to stop, saying, quote, "Your freedom of speech does not entitle you to have all these people spam an actual mental health crisis line." Fresno State President Joseph Castro released a statement saying that Jarrar won't be punished for her actions because she did so as a private citizen, not as a university professor. And because she's a tenured professor, she will not be facing discipline or be fired.
Insanity. Potentially endangering the lives of people calling, the crisis hotline.
Yeah.
By, flooding it with calls that they would not normally receive.
Because I'll tell you one thing, if your crisis hotline, if you know that you only get about 5 calls a week, you're going to staff it and fund it knowing that you're probably going to get no more than 20 calls a week on average.
Yeah, They say they averaged about 5 a week, and they're getting 50 to 70 an hour after the lady posts, the number. Just goes to show how unpopular this lady is, how widely, rejected she is as an individual. But the university is not going to do anything about it. They have tenure, so who cares?
I posted on Facebook. I posted on Facebook about today, or not today, but earlier this week after I first heard about the story, simply saying that I don't even think that tenured professors should exist. I think that no matter who you are, no matter how long you've worked somewhere, if you deserve to be fired, you should be fired. You shouldn't be able to hide behind your tenure in order to do it.
Yeah.
And that's something that I firmly believe.
I believe that as well. Moving on to the next story. The next story is out of the University of Utah, where they installed a cry closet.
Ooh.
The University of Utah has installed a cry closet in their university library for helping students deal with the stress of finals. The sign on it reads, "A safe place for stressed out students, otherwise known as the cry closet." The rules are the following. 1. Knock before entering. 2. Only one person at a time. 3. Limit your time in the closet to no more than 10 minutes. 4. Turn lights and timer off before leaving. And 5. Use hashtag CryCloset you if posting on social media.
Yeah, because one thing that I definitely want to do is post on social media saying, hey, I'm going to go in this cry closet to show that I can't deal with the stress of finals.
Now, to describe this closet, it's not that large. It's
like a box, pretty much.
Yeah, it's just this box that they placed in the middle of the library that, has a door you can enter, where I guess people just go and cry. Which it's, we talk about maturity and becoming an adult in, college. This isn't really encouraging that. This is encouraging the opposite. Mm-hmm. This is giving students a safe space to cry. It's pathetic.
I don't care how stressful your finals are. You are an adult. Deal with your own problems.
Go do it at home.
If you need to cry, then, go in your car. If you don't have a car, go in your bed. I guarantee you have a bed. If you don't have a bed or a car, then you shouldn't be in college. But, stick your face in a pillow at 2:30 in the morning when no one's around and shed a tear. That's all you got to do. Instead, you're publicly walking up, posting the stuff on social media even, essentially encouraging other people to do the same thing, and you wonder why we're a country full of wusses.
Yeah. Moving on from this story, though, we have a story out of UC Berkeley, which we've talked about many, many a times on this program.
Yeah, so this is, it belongs in current year college craziness because it has to do with some stuff that we've talked about in the past. So a federal judge has rejected UC Berkeley's bid to dismiss a lawsuit claiming it discriminated against conservative speakers by imposing unreasonable restrictions and fees on their appearances. The lawsuit was brought on by the Berkeley College Republicans and the Young America's Foundation, based out of Tennessee, who sued the school after the cancellation of Ann Coulter's scheduled speech last April, citing security concerns. They also said that they may pursue an equal protection claim over a security fee that was charged for an appearance by conservative commentator Ben Shapiro that was well above the fee for sitting Supreme Court Justice Sonia Sotomayor. You think that a sitting Supreme Court justice would require a higher security fee to just, simply protect the person than a guy like Ben Shapiro, who essentially does nothing but just tweet all day and does like a podcast. I mean, I don't like Ben Shapiro at all. I don't like Sotomayor at all. But I definitely think that she is much more deserving of higher security fees simply because of the type of high-profile person she is.
Yeah.
But yeah, so they're going to have to face that lawsuit. We'll have to see where that lawsuit goes. But yeah, hopefully if that judge or, a judge in the case rules against UC Berkeley, which they're definitely going to rule against UC Berkeley. There's a lot of data and figures that they show to prove that, yeah, it is going out of its way to discriminate against conservative speakers by charging them more than liberal speakers would for security fees. Granted, they also have a large Antifa presence that likes to try to kill people that are conservatives on campus, so it's understandable. But even then, by charging the higher fee, you're encouraging that as a university for that to happen instead of dealing with your own, terrorist problem that you have on your campus. So, yeah, that could set a really good precedent going forward for other colleges across the country in terms of, charging people fees based on political orientation.
Speaking of security fees rising because of someone's political beliefs, at a university in Canada this happened as well this week. The Lauer Society for Open Inquiry, a student group at the University of Waterloo in Ontario, canceled an immigration talk after the school increased their security fee from $1,600 to $28,500, an increase of nearly 1,800%.
Amazing.
The talk would have featured former Rebel Media contributor Faith Goldie and University of New Brunswick professor Richard Dushny, author of Canada in Decay, Immigration, Diversity, and the Ethnocide of Euro-Canadians. Lindsay Shepherd, which might be a familiar name with the people who have listened to this program because of an incident she had at the same university many months ago. Lindsay Shepherd, the society president, announced the cancellation, saying, quote, "Apologies to everyone who was planning on attending. There is no way we can pay that. We are going to cancel the event."
So there you go. All you got to do is just hike the fees up for these people, and all of a sudden you don't have to worry about conservatives coming onto your campus, do you?
And they already were going to have to charge people to pay for that security fee, charge people to come to see the speakers. And they're going to charge around $20 to begin with.
Hey, a lot of people would pay that to see Faith Goldie.
Yeah, she's a very, very popular conservative speaker. But, the ticket increase you'd have to do to adjust for an
100%. You'd have to essentially raise the ticket price by that much as well. I mean, what? $20 times 1,800% is what? About 19 times higher? That's going to lead you to almost $400 a ticket. No one's going to pay that.
Yeah. So if you want to silence free speech on campus, all you got to do is do what a lot of these universities are doing, which is charge insane security fees. And also, this is a reoccurring theme. We've seen this many times with security fees where they initially give them a pretty reasonable fee. Mm-hmm. I mean, $1,600, that's not crazy for security.
That's relatively normal for a security fee for a university.
But then just hiking it,
arbitrarily,
very close to the actual event date, and they got to cancel it. We've seen this many times, and it's just another example of it happening.
And again, it sucks that happens in Canada, because if this was happening in the United States and then the judge in that lawsuit against UC Berkeley rules against UC Berkeley, which, let's face it, that's probably going to happen, that stuff
you can use
would not...
precedent.
Exactly. It would use as precedence. You wouldn't be able to do that anymore. In fact, that's probably going to open up to a lot more lawsuits against universities in the United States if UC Berkeley loses their side of that lawsuit, because people would be able to say, look, why are you arbitrarily raising your fees so high, essentially trying to silence conservative speakers by by making it so expensive that they can't come to campus. And you talk about how campuses have a left-wing bias already. Imagine how much better that situation could be for our side if you weren't having to have all your speakers get canceled because they can't afford to come on there.
Yeah. Let's go on now to our last story of the week, which is a story out of Texas.
Yes, not only just Texas, UT Austin, half an hour up the road from where we're at.
Yeah.
So UT Austin is about to treat masculinity as a mental health issue. The Counseling and Mental Health Center at the University of Texas at Austin has launched a new program to help male students take control over their gender identity and develop a healthy sense of masculinity. The program, called Masculine UT, with masculine and then UT being capitalized at the end of it, is predicated on a critique of restrictive masculinity, which argues that men suffer from societal pressure to act like a man or fulfill traditional gender roles such as being successful or being the breadwinner. In other words, they're treating masculinity like it's a mental health crisis. Masculine UT warns these attributes are dangerous, claiming that, quote, traditional ideas of masculinity place men into rigid or restrictive boxes which prevent them from developing their emotional maturity. Adding that if you are a male student at UT reading this right now, we hope that learning about this helps you not to feel guilty about having participated in these definitions of masculinity and instead feel empowered to break the cycle. UT Austin is in the process of hiring a healthy masculinities coordinator to run the program. Now, interesting fact, Universities with similar programs, such as UNC Chapel Hill and Northwestern University, have admitted that their programming isn't supported by any evidence.
It's all just, leftists and how they feel about masculinity, which is predominantly they feel intimidated by it, so they just want to demasculize society. Feminize society.
They want you to break that cycle. Don't feel like you have to be successful. Don't be successful.
You don't need to be a breadwinner.
You don't need to take care of your family. You don't need to be successful. Here, go be a little wuss. Like all these. Go to the cry closet. That's what you need to do.
But the thing is, okay, they're talking about you need to break the cycle and, actually have emotional maturity or whatever, which I think is kind of bullshit to begin with. But, say a man takes on this, cycle-breaking definition of masculinity where they're emotionally in touch or anything, they're still going to be attacked for being a male.
Yeah.
They'll still be attacked for being privileged. They're still not going to be afforded the same kind of ability to be openness in society about their emotions. And a lot of those attacks will come from the same women that are preaching this shit to them. Because, we still live in this hetero masculinity successist society. So, good luck with this dumb shit.
That's about time, I think, to move on to some international news, don't you think?
Yeah. With international news, let's start with the biggest stuff this week, which is obviously Korea.
Yeah. So, the Korean leaders are meeting for the first time since the Korean War. South Korean President Moon Jae-in and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un met for the first time at the DNZ line on Friday, the first meeting between the leaders of the two countries since the Korean War. President Moon credited President Trump for bringing the countries together at the same table. The two leaders, along with Trump, will be meeting at an upcoming summit later in May. The Koreas have released statements saying that they wish to seek a formal peace treaty and end to the Korean War, which only ended in an armistice agreement. North Korea has also said that they are open to complete denuclearization and has announced plans to close and publicly disassemble their main nuclear testing site in the northern part of their country. So, we talked about this last week, but we're reaffirming it this week. What has been done in the North Korea, or, to deal with North Korea and to try to, get that situation and make it peaceful has been so good so far that, if there's one thing that's going to be the lasting legacy of Trump, if it's, fix the North Korean problem, that's a good thing. And it looks like it's only beginning. Now, granted, we'll have to see what comes out of this meeting upcoming in May. But as of now, it looks like things are going really, really well. The fact that you even got them to the table. I mean, shaking hands at the DNZ line. Live on TV.
Kim Jong-un stepped across the border. He's the first person to do so.
Yeah. He stepped across the border, shook his hand, and then they walked across the border into North Korea. Both of them hand in hand together. As a show of good faith. I'm not saying that I think that there's going to be a unified Korean peninsula. I don't think that's going to happen. But if you can at least, get the whole
make these countries not hate each other.
Make them not hate each other. I mean, South Korea already said that as a show of good faith, they are stopping their propaganda broadcasts that they were doing to North Korea. That's something that they've been doing for a very, very long time. And, I don't want to keep repeating myself here, but I just got to say it. The progress that's been made in North Korea is amazing, and I can't wait to see how far it goes.
Yeah, and Donald Trump definitely deserves a lot of credit for this. Last night, me and you were watching the rally he went to in Michigan, as opposed to going to that stupid, White House Correspondents' Dinner thing. And at the rally, people were chanting Nobel. President Obama received a Nobel Peace Prize for, I don't know exactly why.
Nothing.
But if anyone deserves a Nobel Peace Prize at the moment for what they've done, it's President Donald Trump.
Yeah, especially if you can actually succeed at this upcoming summit and bring peace between the two nations.
Which I feel like is likely at this point.
I think so, yeah.
And, it's crazy because this, you go back just a couple of months ago, these people were saying that Donald Trump was going to start World War III because of his hostilities against, Kim Jong-un, calling him Rocket Man and whatnot. And, just thinking in particular that Trump would be this, terrible dictator in a sense. and he's up for winning a Nobel Prize at this point.
Yeah.
A Nobel Peace Prize.
If he hasn't been nominated for one of those things, he should be nominated for one of those things. And if anyone doesn't vote for him to get that thing, I mean, obviously there's going to be bias in terms of that organization, but he definitely deserves it. A lot more than Barack Obama did, I'll tell you that's for sure.
Yeah. Moving on now from this Korean stuff, let's talk about what happened in Canada. There was a terrorist attack of sorts that went about.
Yeah, this happened Monday afternoon in Toronto. A driver drove a van into a crowd of people, killing 10 and injuring 15 others. The driver then, after police found him, pointed a gun at the police and wanted them to shoot him, but he was instead arrested and taken into custody. He was identified as 24-year-old Alec Minassian, who joined the Canadian Army but was released after 16 days of recruit training, and in a now infamous Facebook post, which happened on a now deleted profile, and this is still being disputed as whether or not it's his. Facebook said it was legit. I've seen other people that said that it was posted after the attack, so they doubt the authenticity, but that being said, it is worth mentioning. He described himself as an incel, or an involuntary celibate, meaning, a man that can't get laid and blames women for his problems. Very similar to, if you remember, Elliot Rodger, the guy that killed those people in California. Same type of situation. Couldn't get laid, couldn't have sex, women didn't like him, blamed women for the problems, decided to go kill a bunch of people. A majority of those people killed in this attack were women. So that's essentially where they stand. I've heard rumors that said that that's not actually accurate to his reasoning. However, I've seen more stuff pointing to the fact that that actually is his reasoning behind it, which is really, really unfortunate. And I'm not sure how you can deal with problems like that unless, you hire everyone a prostitute when they turn 18 so that they can actually not be virgins anymore. Not going to happen, but, it's just really sad that he had to go out and kill 10 people, injure 15 others simply because, he couldn't get his pants wet.
Yeah, it's terrible what's happened. This is, 10 people dying in a van attack is pretty high for a van attack.
It's one of the worst terrorist attacks that Canada has ever seen.
But, no one's been talking about this whatsoever.
It got memory hold within about 2 days. But mostly because of the Kanye situation, but still.
Yeah. But, the big thing on this story is the incel part of it, the involuntary celibate. And I've been seeing, a lot of backlash against the men that would be a part of this group. And I don't think the backlash that the group of incels, which it's funny that we're even talking about this, is productive to preventing such a situation from happening.
Yeah, if anything, it's going to make it worse. It's going to radicalize these people to be like, well, society hates me, what's the point?
Yeah, it's kind of that, nice guy syndrome where women hate them, the nice guy, the incel, more than even the cheater or the douchebag or of that sort. And I just think it's been very easy to see that vitriol with this event.
And what's also unfortunate is I know a lot of people that would pretty much be classified as incels.
Yeah.
Society has rejected them. Women have rejected them. They can't get a girlfriend. They can't get laid. Now, granted, vast majority of the ones that I know are very nice people that would never do something like this. But at the same time, a lot of people like that exist.
And it drives them crazy.
And if you look at just the name of it, involuntary celibate, they can't do anything about it. No matter what they do, and I can understand how they would.
And they're laughed at for their circumstance. They're a lesser person because of it.
Hell, maybe we should have government-funded prostitutes for, every man on his birthday, if he's not married or has a girlfriend, government should pay a prostitute to go out and have sex with them. That way you at least get laid once a year, and you don't go out and kill 10 people. Maybe that is a situation. I mean, would you rather pay, for a cheap prostitute $200 for one day to go out and have sex with a guy for a night to make sure he doesn't kill people, or pay for 10 people that are dead? What do you think?
I don't
know. Hey, if you want socialism, I say we need government-funded prostitution.
Didn't the Soviet Union have, government-assigned wives?
I have no idea.
I believe that's something they did. I might be wrong.
I know that, if you want to talk about government...
It's been done before,
If you want to talk about governments going out of their way to make sure that men don't get... or to make sure that men actually get laid and don't kill each other, The United States government has done that before, okay? The Texas government did that. Back when the oil fields were expanding in West Texas, all those guys went out there. There were no women out there, and they were getting rowdy, they were getting violent. The Texas government paid for women to go out there and date the guys, marry the guys, have sex with the guys, simply so those things would not happen. I don't know if it was entirely successful, but we've done that in the past. Prostitution is the oldest job in human history.
And
for
something we'll talk about at the end of this program.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I'm alluding to, too. So it's unfortunate that we have to wait till the end to talk about that story. So let's go to the next one so we can bring this up at the end.
Let's talk about what's happened in Europe this week. The first story we want to talk about is the Alfie Evans situation.
Yeah, so shifting tone from something humorous to something absolutely sad and tragic is the story of Alfie Evans, which if you haven't been following the story, I assume you have as well. This is probably one of the most evil stories that I've ever heard in my life. And Alfie Evans is the terminally ill 23-year-old child. He was at the center of that large dispute, passed away early Saturday morning at Alderhay Hospital in Liverpool in the United Kingdom from his undiagnosed neurodegenerative disorder. So his case was famous because British courts ruled that the child was better off dying than continuing to seek medical care even after several appeals from his family. His parents wanted to take the boy home so that he could either receive personal care or die in peace, but the hospital would not allow him. The hospital took him off a ventilator on Monday, and the boy was able to breathe on his own for a while, but his father Tom had to continue giving him mouth-to-mouth resuscitation in order to keep him alive. And this is where things get even worse, and you really start to hate the British government. The Italian government even granted Alfie citizenship and said that they would provide as much care as they could, free of charge to the family, if they could get the boy to Italy. Pope Francis himself even tweeted his prayers and hoped that the boy could receive his treatment in Italy as well. The hospital infamously now placed police outside of their room to prevent the family from taking the boy away or preventing anyone unauthorized from getting inside. There were a lot of protesters outside the hospital for obvious reasons. The Merseyside police even tweeted that they were monitoring social media posts regarding the case. Now, monitoring social media, a lot of people like to see the Orwellian aspect of them, looking at what people are saying. A lot of it had to do with the fact that people were making threats against the hospital. I don't blame people for doing that because of how evil the British courts and hospitals acting in this case. But it really goes to show this is proof that, in the United Kingdom, they consider, they know what's best for you. You don't know what's best for you. You don't have control over what you think should be done with your children. The government does, and they're going to make that decision. And if you disagree with them, they're going to force you. They took the boy off a ventilator. They took the boy off of feeding him. I think it was through an IV, but they still, essentially sentenced the kid to die. Even if the kid was terminally ill and he was going to die. You have the Italian government grants the kid citizenship, grants the kid saying, if you can get this kid to Italy, we will pay for as much treatment as we can, do everything humanly possible to save his life. Even if we're unsuccessful, we are at least going to try. The British government gave up on him. They said, we're not going to do anything more. It's better off if this kid just dies than living with anything. When in reality, even if there was a slight chance, they could have taken it. They could have gotten that kid to Italy. There were thousands and thousands of people across the country that were voicing their support for this kid and their family. Yet the British government instead said, no, you know what, fuck it, we're just going to kill the kid instead. That's a death sentence, what they get for him. And the British government and the hospital, what they did here is absolutely purely evil.
Yeah, it really goes to show that, they always say, in the United States, we don't have a socialized healthcare system. We don't have a single-payer system, and people die because of that. But this is an instance where people died because there is a socialized medicine. They don't have options.
They gave up on the kid.
They do not have any sort of options because the government controls everything in the healthcare industry. Do you remember, it was many months ago, but Jimmy Kimmel made that big monologue with his son about why we need to have a single payer in the country. Mm-hmm. He hasn't said anything about this case whatsoever. Now, a little inconvenient to have to acknowledge reality in situations like this, but this isn't the only instance that we've seen similar to this. I forget who was the child that...
It was Charlie Gard.
Yeah, it was a couple of months ago this also happened again. And, we've talked about the NHS many times in this program before. They've canceled thousands of surgeries this year. And, the people who have been canceled on have no other alternative possible for them in the United Kingdom. You just have to live by the decision that the health services give to you, which in this case is death, and in many other cases is death. And why, we don't want socialized medicine in our country either.
A lot of people criticize people like Sarah Palin back in 2008 for bringing up the whole thing of death panels. Yeah, there weren't exactly quote-unquote death panels as part of, the Affordable Care Act like a lot of people, thought there would be. That's essentially what this is, though, is a death panel. This is judges deciding whether or not your kid gets treatment, whether or not you can continue to receive medical care. When a doctor becomes a doctor, they take the Hippocratic Oath to do what they can to save a person regardless of who they are, what they've done, whatever. Okay? If you're a doctor that, obviously they're going to have to obey what the law says because they don't want to lose their license or, get arrested or anything. But at the same time, if you're a doctor that goes along with a system like that, how can you live with yourself? Knowing that you're allowing this sweet, innocent, almost 2-year-old boy to die. Even if he's going to die anyway, but to just give up on him and say, you know what, there's nothing we can do, it's better off if the kid just dies. How would the parents react to that? I mean, the parents were at the center of this lawsuit too. Now, since the kid has died, they've been a lot more respectful, for obvious reasons, but at the same time, they were trying. They were suing. They were countersuing. This thing lasted for months. Until, over the last week or so when it really started to get bad, when the kid started losing his health and he got taken off the ventilator and they wouldn't allow him to be fed. Yeah. It's just, as I said before, it's absolutely pure evil on the part of the British government, and they should be completely ashamed of themselves.
Moving on from that story, though, our second story is a story out of Sweden. This is a story that has been just recently reported on out of Fria Tider, but actually happened at the end of last year. A woman who was part of a Facebook group against the deportation of migrants was raped and abused by 2 Afghans last year on December 26. After not meeting someone after a night out, she decided to go with 2 African migrants named Anwar and Fardin. They went back to the migrants' accommodations at their, refugee center, and they proceeded to drink. They began to touch her despite her protest against doing so. Anwar proceeded to vaginally and anally rape the woman, while Fardin masturbated next to her. Anwar was convicted of rape and will face 1 year and 3 months in prison and have to pay a fine of 13,000 euros. Fardin was convicted of sexual abuse and will pay a fine of only 2,300 euros. The prosecutor never even asked for Fardin to be deported.
This goes back to what I was saying earlier. If you are, granted, these people technically are legal, but at the same time, they are foreign nationals residing in your country. This time they're allowed to be there, okay? This guy raped the woman. Flat out, he raped the woman.
Yeah.
All he gets is 1 year and 3 months in prison and a fine of 13,000 euros. Okay? There are people who do a lot lesser of crimes than rape and get longer prison sentences and higher fine pays than that.
Yeah.
Okay? At some point, you really need to start taking yourself seriously. Okay? Number 1, he should be deported. Or 2, he should be executed. He shouldn't have to, pay for this guy to live in your prisons or anything like that. You need to get rid of these people. Your country is not better off with these people there. Whether or not their lives are better because they're in your country doesn't matter. Your country is worse off. This woman now has to live with the rest of her life knowing that she was raped. Okay? That does a lot of mental stress on people and causes people stuff like post-traumatic stress. It's going to negatively affect her the rest of her life. Her life essentially has been destroyed in a way because of this guy. But no, he's essentially getting a slap on the wrist. Not even going to get deported.
Yeah.
And once he pays his fine, he's out of prison, he's probably going to go and do it again.
It's crazy to receive only 1 year and 3 months for rape. That is extremely low. But this woman, she's a leftist. She's a liberal. And she wanted to prove the xenophobes wrong. That Afghan migrants aren't dangerous. Despite all the information that we know about, these refugees and their risk for rape, she wanted to prove them all wrong. And, it is within the leftist liberal mind to have this de-escalated sense of self-preservation and danger. because it conflicts with their ideas of equality. You know, you have to see these people as equal. And for this lowered sense of risk assessment, she was raped.
Mm-hmm.
And you think that this would prove a point to people that, hey, maybe you should not let these people flood in your goddamn country and rape your citizenry. But no, you know, I bet she still doesn't want them to be deported.
No, probably not.
You know, we've had many instances of, especially out of, like, you know, the Calais jungle, where workers will go there to try, females will go there to try and help the refugees there, and the refugees rape them, and they keep it hidden because they don't want their attackers to be deported. They still care that much to keep them there. These people that are ruining their lives. It's insane. And it's a mental illness, really.
It really is.
Let's go to the last story for Europe, and that is Finland is ending their universal basic income program. The Finnish government on Tuesday announced that by the year's end, they will be ending their universal basic income program, along with new measures to cut benefits to those not seeking employment. The program gave $685 monthly to 2,000 randomly selected unemployed people aged 25 to 28, and what they found is people worked. They had less incentive to even work, which is you know.
Imagine my shock.
Imagine my shock. We've talked about UBIs sparingly on this show. I think we have talked about it before, but you know, the progressives are especially pushing for it now that, oh, the UBI will fix all of the problems in society. People won't have to worry about being hungry or homeless, and they'll be able to get so much accomplished when they have this, you know, fixed income coming to them every single month. But it doesn't work. And Finland is not only ending it, but also wants to have more restrictions against receiving benefits, because they saw so many people that received the money just didn't have any incentive to work.
I know, and all the socialists in the U.S. are like, we need to be more like Sweden. We need to be more like Finland. Well, look what Finland just did.
Yeah.
Take an example from them. They realized this doesn't work. And if it didn't work for them, it's definitely not going to work for us.
Yeah. Let's move on now to our story out of the Middle East.
Yeah, this is kind of a funnier type thing. And also we're going to talk more about that Trump rally. So this is a story out of Israel. Israel's construction minister Yoav Gallant has instructed top officials to begin the process of planning and approving a new quarter for embassies of other countries that wish to move or open new embassies in Jerusalem. The United States, Czech Republic, Romania, and Honduras have all announced plans to move their embassies to the capital. Gallant suggested names for the new embassy block, initially calling it Embassy Town, but decided he might instead call it Trump Town. President Trump boasted during his rally in Michigan Saturday night that the new embassy in Jerusalem will only cost the U.S. $150,000 instead of the original planned cost of over $1 billion. So, you know, you and I aren't the biggest pro-Israel people at all out here, and I don't really personally care about moving the embassy to Jerusalem, but you gotta admit, that's kind of funny.
It is good, though, the savings that he got on it. He went into pretty good detail during his Michigan rally about how when they said, oh, it's going to cost $1 billion, he was like, what?
He was in the middle of signing the thing and crossed it out and said, we're not doing that.
Yeah, he said during the rally that he had written Donald down. They didn't get to Trump yet, but he just X'd out his name and said, we're not doing that. I'm not paying $1 billion for a one-story building. And, yeah, this guy came back to him and said, President Trump, I'll get it for $150,000.
That's like the cost of a small house in Texas.
Yeah.
Like, that's, for government, that's really cheap.
And Trump, you know, told him, like, hey, if you go over the $150,000, it's okay.
Yeah.
But, yeah, it was a funny moment during the rally yesterday.
Yeah. So are we to our last story now?
Yeah, we are at our last story for this week, and our last story is out of New Zealand. New Zealand lists prostitution as a skill for immigrants. This week, New Zealand added a new skill for migrants to add to their Australian and New Zealand standard classification of occupations list, which is kind of because Australia and New Zealand both have merit-based immigration systems. So to immigrate to the country, you need to qualify with certain amount of skills in different industries. And added to the list this week was prostitution and escortship. The skill is regarded as providing social companionship. Would-be migrants would need to have an ANSCO skill level of 5, which means they need to be making at least $25.87 an hour and must have at least 3 years experience in the industry, which in this instance would be the industry of prostitution.
So as long as you're a prostitute that's been
making
a prostitute,
a lot of money,
as long as you're making at least essentially $26 an hour, which, I mean, let's consider, if you're a prostitute, you're making more than $26 an hour. But if you've been doing it for 3 years, I guess that counts then?
Yeah.
I suppose.
And the skill, lastly, is not included on the skill shortage list.
Does that mean they have too many of them?
Not that they're saying that they have too many of them, but they're not saying that there's a big present demand for more prostitutes, just that they do see it as a skill that you could provide for them. So yeah, this is one of the weirdest things I've ever even heard from immigration.
At least it's not government funded prostitution.
In New Zealand they actually have legalized prostitution.
I think Australia does in some areas as well. I mean, I've heard about down in Australia they have some of their more high end prostitutes, the ones that are super expensive. A lot of that's down in Australia and New Zealand as well. So I tend to think it's probably at least similar. But yeah, you're right. New Zealand, it's pretty much yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, that's the show for this week. We talked about quite a lot of stuff. I thought that we had a pretty good show today.
Yeah, decent, really good.
Yeah, I'm have a good feeling about this week's show.
Me too.
So with that said, thank you for listening to another episode of Trump Public Radio, and have a good one.
Goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye. Yeah, I think this was a really good show.
Me too.
Everything came off very